Today, following along from the birth of Shri Ram, what happened next? So we are on page 142 and 143 in our version of the Ramcharitamanas that we are using. And on page 142, we are going to begin with the Doha, Bhaye Kumar Jabahi Sab Bhrata. So I'll give you a second to find it on page 142. And those of you following on the various forms of media, you would see the chaupais being put up for you together with the translation. So, as we normally do, we would sing the chaupais, look at the translation, and then importantly, analyze with some interpretation. भय कुमार जब ही सब भ्राता, भय कुमार जब ही सब भ्राता, देन जनेऊ गुरु पीतु माता, दीन जनेऊ गुरु पीतु माता, गुर ग्रह गए, गुर ग्रह गए पढ़न रघुराई, गुर ग्रह गए पढ़न रघुराई, अल्पकाल विद्या सब आई, अल्पकाल विद्या सब आई, जय राम श्री राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम. As soon as the brothers were all grown up, the Guru, as well as their parents, invested them with Janeu, the sacred thread. The Lord of Raghus, Shri Ram, then proceeded to his Guru's house to study, and in a very short time, he mastered all the main branches of knowledge. Next chaupai. जाकी सहज श्वास श्रुति चारी, जाकी सहज श्वास श्रुति चारी, सो हरि पढ़ यह कौतुक भारी, सो हरि पढ़ यह कौतुक भारी, विद्या विनय निपुण गुणशीला, विद्या विनय निपुण गुणशीला, खेल ही खेल सकल नृपलीला, खेल ही खेल सकल नृपनीला, जय राम श्री राम जय जय राम, जय राम श्री राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय जय राम. बोले श्री राजा रामचंद्र की जय. The translation: what a great fun that Hari, whose natural breath stands crystallized in the form of the four Vedas, should go to school. All of the brothers, they became proficient in scholarship and modesty, virtue and decorum, how to behave, and they practiced all of the princely sports. In other words, they went to school and they did what they had to do, which was to learn all of these good qualities that they needed for life ahead. Okay, devotees, so Shri Ram and his brothers went to the Guru's home, to school, to learn, and they learned everything very well. Good. So what? What's the point? Why are we looking at this? Now, we all have children in society, the younger ones, and we need to take care of them. And, you know, again, addressing important, pressing societal needs. Currently, we have a big problem, a very big problem. And that has to do with the way that children are raised, the way that children are treated, the way that children are cared for. Now, in terms of the responsibility here, you have two parties at play. You have the parents and you have the children. At one point, we were all children, and still are. We're taken care of by our parents. Then, some of us became parents, and we have our own children. And the first thing that happened here, as you could see, is that the Guru and the parents invested them with Janeu, this sacred thread. Now, the practice of, Janeu may be limited in Hinduism to, certain people and certain castes and whatnot. That is not my concern. Everybody could wear this Janeu, not a physical thread with, a sort of social construct around it. But what does it mean? We offer Janeu. So what does it mean? The lesson here is when we have children, we should give them this Janeu, which is an initiation into something. So whether you're a man, a woman, or anything in between, the concept of a Janeu, you could take it and apply it. How? The mantra that we use for Janeu, it goes like this. Om Yagyopavitam Paramam Pavitram Prajapatir Yat Sahajang Purusthat Ayushamagram Pratimuncha Shubram Yagyopavitam Balamastu Teja. What does it mean? It means literally the Yagyopavit, Yagya means sacrifice, and Pavitam is like a thread. It's a thread of sacrifice. So the Yagyopavit, which is Pavitra, it means pure. Pavitra means pure. And born from that creator, this thread gives what? Long life, strength, bala, and splendor. Shining, tejas. In other words, the Yagyopavit, when it is given, it is really saying that we are starting from this point of being impure, and I use that in inverted commas, and with this three threads, a Yagyopavit Janeu, it has three loops around it. It's made up of three threads. Just like the Trishul, Trishul, there are three things that we need to consider. So it is saying basically that when we are all born as little children and we start to grow, we are in a state of impurity, and that is not a physical impurity. It doesn't mean dirty. It just means that we're in a state of, we use the word ignorance. We are not aware of ourselves really. We think we are this little baby, wah, 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 and you identify with that as you grow older. So the Janeu really symbolizes three things, as I said. What are these three things? There are three problems or three malas, as we've mentioned before. And simply they are known as Anavamal, Maimal, and Karmamal. Now I know the words used are difficult for people, so I'll explain it simply. One, Anavamal, means I tend to feel incomplete. This incomplete thinking I'm limited to my body that we all experience throughout our lives is the root ignorance, as it were. It leads to, everything else. The second one is Maimal, which is this problem of me, mine and not mine. So in your life, everything you associate it with me, my body, my mind, what is mine, what I own, my family, my house, my property, etc. And what is not mine, everything else, everybody else. And so we go ahead. So this feeling of incompleteness leads to this maimal, which leads you to seeing everybody and everything as being different. And then that leads now to karmamal. Karmamal in action. This impurity in action, meaning that we all run around the world trying to find people and things to make us happy. Simple? So the three strands of the Janeo, they represent, these three mullas that we need to overcome. And what's the solution then? When you put on the Janeo, at least for priests and others, forget the thread for now. Whether you wear the thread or not is irrelevant to me. It's how you, this practice, you carry that Yagyopavit in your mind. What you need to do, three things, as we keep mentioning, just like the Trishul. You need to have your guru, you need to have your guidance from your scriptures, and the aim is to develop that internal guru, the most important thread. Find yourself. Purify your mind, turn it inward, and find yourself. We say that is finding God. Okay? And of course, you are reminded that those three threads also represent, the three main methods we all use. We have prayer, we have contemplation, and we have meditation. Throughout your life so far, that is all you've been doing, and moving forward into the future, that is all you will be doing. These are the three main methods that we use. Prayer, meditation, and contemplation. And you notice that doesn't have to really do anything physical. All these things are props. They all have to do with what goes on in your mind. Okay? So, investing with the sacred thread, as you see here, is very important for everybody. The priest and whoever else will do their Janeo Sanskar, but this Sanskar, a key turning point, is important for everybody. Okay? So, as children, now you ask, have your parents given you this knowledge? As parents, have you given your children this knowledge? It's for you to think about. Now, we move on. The second main point I'll make coming from this morning is on this key issue of parenting, being a parent. Now, we all know that we've heard before that Sanatana Dharma gives us a general model. I don't want to say prescriptive. You know what prescriptive means? You do this, then you have to do that, then you have to do that. So you've all heard of the 4 life stages. You have, first one, brahmacharya, then grihast, vanprast, and sannyas. I'm not going to use those terms, I'm going to use simpler terms. The first phase of life, they all begin with S, is the student stage. Then the next stage is the settling down stage. The stage after that is the separating stage. And the final stage, the sannyas, is what you call the spiritual or spiritual focus stage. Clear? So, we give rough ages and whatnot, but it doesn't really matter. Generally, when you're young, up to 20, 25, some people study more now. It doesn't matter. But that is the student stage. You focus on gaining your knowledge, preparing you for life. Yes? And if young people ask, what is my dharma? What is my duty to do right now? It is this, which is to study, to acquire knowledge, to get good values, practice. Okay? Then you move on to settling down. That's the next phase in your life. If you choose. Some people skip stages. That is perfectly fine. If you go that way, you get married, fine. If not, your karmas take you, as we say, another way, perfectly fine. Don't let anyone make you feel that you have to live your life a certain way. I don't subscribe to that at all. And then you have vanprast, where you're supposed to be letting go. So say, you reach 60, 65, whatever, people living longer now due to medical care. You're supposed to start separating mentally, right? So when you see old people trying to hold on to the children, make them do this, make them do that, try to control everybody's life, you ain't doing vanprast at all. You're supposed to be pulling back, not grabbing on more. So this is the model of Sanatana Dharma, right? And look at your age and what you're supposed to be doing. So say you have children and they're on their own, they're living their life. You are supposed to be there digging up in the business. You pull back, be a support, provide advice if asked. Okay? And pull back. Focus on yourself. And when you get to sannyas, you're totally free of these attachments. Remember, attachments is a mental thing. It just means that you could be in your same house doing whatever you're doing, but mentally, you're not attached. It means these things don't worry you anymore. Okay? So that's the model we have. So right now, we are dealing with Shri Ram here as an example for the first stage, the first part, which is the student stage. Very important. Now, I'm going to ask you some very difficult questions. For those of you who have children, I want you to think carefully and answer this in your own mind. Why did you want children? Why? Uncle, why? Why? Why you have children? Okay, so that's one reason. People want to continue the lineage, which you might think is a good reason, but I don't really agree with that. I'll come to that eventually. What is the other reason you have children? Why? Well, some people just because it happened. Some people because everybody doing it. Some people, they really want somebody to, Some people want to have children so that they can live their life through them. What they couldn't achieve, they want the children to do it. Some people want to have a labor force. They want to have their own little CPEP. Especially long time. You want people to cut cane, have a bunch of children, let them go and cut cane with you. Second reason. And the third one, people want to have children to carry on the legacy and to be proud of their achievements. Hardly anybody just has, I suppose, children for the sake of having children for the experience. Well, that was mine. I didn't want to have children for any particular reason. If you ask me why, honestly, I can't say. Now, if you look at the reasons I've given you, aside from just for the experience of it, all of them are selfish. All of them. So if you answered to that there, and I mean, we just discussing here, it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. You have to analyze your own thinking. So we all have children or want to have children. Why? You want them to do something, you want to make them something, you want to live a life through them, you want to make your parents happy so they could be grandparents, blah, blah, blah. Nothing to do with just the process or the enjoyment of having children, always some selfish motive. Okay. Now, to me, and according to Sanatan Dharma, and according to psychology, remember I tried to cover all bases, the best reason for having children is to experience the joy and love of having children for the sake of it. From the moment you have children for a strong selfish reason, we start up on the wrong foot right there. Start up on the wrong foot. Now, what I'm going to say, I'll proceed by many people wouldn't like it. But it is my belief and somebody has to say it. There is a problem, especially in the Hindu and Indian community, with parents. You always hear what the child must do. The child must do this. They must do what the parents want. Let me ask you parents, what training you had to be a parent? How did you know to be a parent? I suspect most people, they go through life and they see their parents, how they were treated, and then do the same with the children. How do you know what your parents did was the right thing? How you know? You say, well, I come out good. Again, self-praise is no praise. You can't judge yourself. How you could judge yourself? I have a problem with this, devotees. Big-time spiritualists, priests, whoever leaders, who judges them? They come and say they judge themselves. You can't judge yourself. If you want to know if you're a dharmatma, you ask your wife, you ask your children, you ask your parents, you ask those around you. Don't ask to judge yourself because all of us, we are biased. People tend, and this is a psychological fact, people tend to think that they are better than they actually are. We all do it. So let's come back to parents now. How many of you, I'm going to ask you a question and think carefully and answer, whether old parent, grandparent, young parent, don't matter. How many of you had training in parenting, or you educated yourself in how to be a good parent? Raise your hand. Nobody? I raising my hand because I try to train myself and find out. Doesn't mean I didn't make mistakes. I'm still making mistakes, but I recognize the fact that I needed to learn. For me, I thought being a parent was the most important thing in my life. And if I want to do a good job, I better train myself. So what about everybody else? How did you train yourself to be a parent? And notice that this is not for people only who have children, you know. Teachers in school, caregivers in the children's home, we are all fulfilling this sort of parenting function. So how you know what you're doing is the right thing? I feel like doing a good job. You could feel what you want. Doesn't make you right. So, I'm going to listen carefully if you're interested in some training, and what I would say, my intention is not to come down on anybody, it's to show you errors in your own thinking, and if you are willing to change and open to it, you would do it. If you say to yourself, well, this is how I am, I can't change, I saw already, that is total foolishness in my mind. Because the moment you feel you know everything, that is the time you stop learning. You understand? So how old you are, how young, don't matter. Keep an open mind, and you must always be willing to change for the better. Okay? Otherwise, it will make no sense. But I will still say what I must. What do we need to do with children? What it is you're really doing as a parent? There are 3 movements or 3 things with children that we need to know. The first one is when you have a child, you are moving that child from a state of dependence to a state of independence. Get it clear? So you have a baby, wah, wah, wah. The baby can't feed itself, it can't clean itself, do anything. You take care. It is dependent on you, he or she. But after a while, you are working and caring for this child so that that child will become independent. And some parents, maybe some of you right here, you reach that stage of being, thinking the child independent yet. Child might be 50 years old. You still want to treat the child like the child dependent. At the end of this student or brahmacharya stage, that child must become independent. Have the tools to be independent. Not so, the educators that we have here, Uncle Raj, Ms. Rupati, past principals, Auntie Annie, a lot of people in education, you know these things, but the general population apparently doesn't. So the first one is to move from dependence to independence. The second one is to move that child from playfulness to a worker. And when I say a worker, I don't mean to get employed somewhere. What I mean is that we are all playful when we are born. This is how we learn, right? You know, devotees are now for children to enter into preschool, some of them need a CV. A CV, a resume. What a baby do with a resume in your life? The achievements of the baby. Oh, I'm a baby. I am potty trained. I drink milk when my mommy tells me. No! A baby needs to be a baby. Children need to play and to be free. But look at what society we all are doing to our children. Look at it. So, moving from playfulness to that discipline where you could work, but you don't want to beat out that playfulness. All of you adults so serious and, uppity, everything is a bad thing. That is not the model you want for your children, is it? Why do you think so many people have anxiety, stress in society? It's not people alone to blame, devotees, it's parents. It is parents. And the last movement is a movement from tradition to innovation. So what I mean? If people in the past, our ancestors, didn't innovate and change, do you think we would have what we have now? So when you have children, it is not a case of passing on to children to do the same thing you do and the ancestors do for donkey years, but to give them the principles and let them grow to innovate, to change for the better. You understand? So if you as an old person want your hardback old son or hard daughter to, be innovative, you can't expect them to do everything you say to do, think the way that you do, but yet still say be innovative. We all know, devotees, that parents and schools kill creativity. Everybody wants to be creative, but doing everything not to be creative. Creativity, by definition, means breaking and flouting the rules, but yet you want them to be obeyers, rules. Listen to all the rules. You're a good child because you listen to everything. You are a bad child because you break the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, I beat you with a belt until you fall on a step and you're dead. Isn't it? Isn't it? You want to control that child. It's like a product you're making. If it come out bad, you throw it away. Is that what we've become? So as a parent, these three things you need to know. Now, how do children learn? Second question. Children learn by observing and listening. Just two things. So let me tell you something as parents. You could talk to that child and say, do this, do that, do the next. If you yourself don't live the example, that child would not learn properly. A child, we all learn from one, observation, you call it observational learning, and verbal learning, learning from testimony, stories that we tell. This is how we learn. Even fiction and whatnot that we read, these things we learn from it. So, what is the key point here? The key point is that, you see, if you tell a child, do as I say but not as I do, do what I tell you to do, but you do all kind of thing. You're drinking, you're treating your wife all how, you're beating children. Nothing is happening there. It is totally pointless. Your children model you. So one of the keys to parenting, devotees, is this. Don't say the child this and the child that and nail and whatever, Fix yourself before you fix your children. Key point. If the child bad, is you bad. I make no apologies. The parents are, to a certain degree, at fault. But you see, devotees, what happens is that we think that our job as parents is to mold that child into something good, what we perceive to be good. If the child doesn't turn out how we want that child to turn out, we have failed. Is that reasonable on us? Do we have that level of control over people? Think about it. Okay, so saying those things, recognizing we have a problem, let us come to the heart of the matter. You want to be a good parent, I assume. You care about children, your children and others as well. What do you do? What is the model you must use? I'm going to present two models, the bad way and the good way. And I'm going to use an analogy or metaphor. I'm going to use a carpenter versus a gardener. Now listen carefully. Most people have the carpenter model of parenting, the manufacturing model. You build a child. You take a child and you build the child up. You're building a house, you're knocking the wood, you straighten it, you get it nice, you can evaluate it, it's perfect, it's looking good. That is how we think that we need to raise children. So childcare, as parents everywhere else, has become obsessive, controlling, goal-oriented. You have a goal in mind for how you want your child to be. And so we try to make or force these children to become a particular kind of adult. How many of you have that model? I had that model in mind initially. Now, this, devotees, this carpenter model of raising children, caring for children, is wrong. I can't state it any simpler than that. It has been shown not to work. You produce anxious children that hate you. So the children don't come out good, and they don't like you because of it. What advantage is there? You see, the big misleading idea is that education, parenting, is supposed to shape a child into a particular kind of adult. But the idea is, devotees, you cannot do that. Many people have tried that for their whole life, and the children still come, people come out all how. You have no control at the end of the day, this nature, this innate nature. You have no control. So what then should be the alternative model. What should we do? And this is where we come to it now. The model of the gardener. The gardener. If you have a selfish reason for having children, and that child doesn't turn out to do what you want, you are going to be disappointed. And it is not the fault of the child, it is your fault, as I said. You have to believe this, you have to accept this. But if you adopt not the carpenter model where you're building a child how you want, but the gardener model, let's look at this and see how we could apply it. So we're talking about caring for children as gardening. When you have a garden, what you do? You take, pieces of plant and stick it together to make what you want? No. You provide the right environment and let those plants grow. Sometimes it wouldn't grow how you want it to grow. It might have weeds. You spend most of your time digging in manure. But at the end of the day, the plant still grows how it has to grow. So the idea is parenting, which is actually a bad word. Since when parenting became a thing, you take the word parent, a noun, and make it into a verb. So, for example, my wife then, she should do wifing. As a husband, I should do husbanding. As a child, I should do childing. It's not something that you do to somebody else. Do you understand? To be a parent, that is something, not parenting. You have to be a parent. And what is being a parent about? To spend moment by moment with your child, to enjoy those moments, not to focus on what the end result is. Big difference. So if you want, and you don't believe me, believe in Gita. Same thing. Do not focus on the fruits of actions. Fruits here means what the outcome is. Focus on doing the job, the pleasure of, being in the presence of children, in family, feeling that love. That is what it is about, not what the child turns out to be. Otherwise, you're always going to end up being disappointed. You understand? So the idea here is, devotees, it comes back down to love. We are all treating people like things. You want to make children, you want to get them a certain way. Whereas what we need to do is be like a gardener and provide the right environment for the seeds to grow. And importantly, remember, it is not carpentry. It's like tending a garden. You help these children grow and become their own people. So again, in the Hindu community, Indian community, you hold on to the children, you want them to take care of you when you get old, this, that, and the other. When what is supposed to happen is when they finish this student stage, you're supposed to be confident that they're independent. Let them go. Let them make mistakes. Let them go. But you want to hold on. You want to get the right wife. You interfere in the marriage. You're digging up in everything, left, right, and center. Leave people alone. I know all Olive X, And I am happy about that. You see, nobody else will tell you that, you see. But I am speaking to a younger generation. And many young people tell me, from the temple too, are frustrated with my parents. And we all get frustrated with our parents. When you reach a certain age, you just think, my mother and father mad boy. It happens to everybody. But from a parent point of view, the worst thing that you could do is try to control your children. Get them to do what you want to do. Then you've completely missed the boat. You've missed the boat. Okay? So, hard lesson, but I said, it's not too long to change. It's not too, late to change. What you need to do really is, first of all, analyze what you've done. You could be a parent for years, a grandparent, and you don't know what your model of parenting is. Simple question. So pick one. Are you a carpenter or a gardener? If you're a carpenter, okay, or have been, but there's a better way. The gardener model is a better way. Caring for children is like tending the garden. Now, devotees, remember, being a good parent does not mean that your children will end up being successful or happy. People who say that those things have been unrealistic. You could do the best thing by your children and they still turn out all how. You have to accept that. It is not your fault once you've done the best that you could do. You've gardened in the right way. If the plant grow up and it get a set of, weeds on it, or you get a fungus or whatever, and it start to wilt up all how, you try your best to support it. If it has to wither and die, it does. But you've done your job as a gardener, isn't it? So, we have to be very clear what we're doing here. Because a lot of damage in society has been done by the previous generation. So don't come and tell me the younger generation, this, that, and the other, and have to do that. I reject all of that. The fault is yours. We have our burdens to carry, and the younger ones. But the older people, don't come and say this, that, and the other. You are being illogical. Illogical. And it doesn't hold water by me. And devotees, I've lived in the UK, in Trinidad, I've been in the States, I've gone all over the place. All sort of contexts. The problems are the same. And it comes down to people, how they think, what their models are. And I can tell you, we have a big problem in this, the Hindu-Indian community with respect to parenting and children. That is the problem. It starts there. So, if you're interested, right, then, you try to educate yourself, do a better job. And it's not too late. It is not too late to make a switch. So, to summarize, our job as parents is not to make a particular kind of child. Whether your child wins awards or it doesn't win anything but just they're developing, same love. Same love. But no, my son is a doctor, but the next one, doing whatever. What you say, by just saying that in your mind, you appreciate one more than the other because of what they have achieved. And it's a big mistake. Everybody focusing on achievements. What about love? Life is about love, not about what you achieve or get. At the end of the day, you all heard these things go away. But if for your whole life, your child is unhappy in your home, what you really do? What you really achieve? You can answer that? So, it is not to make a particular kind of child. Our job is not to shape our child's minds. It is not your job to train a child what to think. It is your job to train your child how to think. Educators and parents. Big difference. So don't tell me, I must think so and so and you must do so. No. Present the pros and cons and let me decide. I am responsible for my life and so are you. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Because people who tell you otherwise, their sole aim, believe you me, is to control you. Control. And I'll keep coming back to this theme of control over and over. From child abuse, spousal abuse, domestic, but everything has to do with this issue of control. I'll deal with that another time. And so finally, our job even is not to tell children how to play. Don't do this, come here, helicopter parenting. Do that, don't do that, you must do it so. So, that is not what you do. You provide the right environment and let them play, learn, pick up on their own. You help them, teach them how to think. Okay? So, devotees, to wrap up, what really then makes caring for children worthwhile? The idea is, a good parent creates an adult who is independent and who can make their own choices. Alright, uncles and aunties? If you drop dead today, are you confident that your children can make their own choices and live life? Because you could be here. You want to hold on to them from the grave? Or, well, you're born up, so you're not in the grave. But you know what I mean. And when this should happen, we see 20, 25, or before they get married, please don't try to control them after they get married. You're looking for trouble. Everybody looking for trouble. Once they develop, they finish their schooling, they're ready to move on, let go and be a support. Like a friend, as the Paramachar mentioned. Chanak that you always hear. You become like a friend. But don't remain in that parent kind of thing, dominating over their heads, restricting them what they want to do. Let them live their lives. Don't try to live your life through your children. You'll be making a big mistake. And maybe you'll have some karma to pay for that. Okay? So devotees, I want to put this idea across to summarize. Carpenter versus gardener. We've all made mistakes as parents, but what I think is unacceptable is that you don't educate yourself on how you should be a good parent, a good caregiver. You provide that right environment for children to grow and become on their own. Don't grab on, hold on, be detached. This is the principle of Shiva. Now, God somewhere, live as Shiva, that principle in you, and you will see miracles in your own lives. This issue is very close to my heart, which probably if I want to carry on a little bit, but you see, treating with children, being involved with the children's home, domestic abuse, these things, I am addressing these things head on, because on top everybody's nice devotee, but underneath you're doing all kind of dotishness, right? And that is unacceptable, at least from my point of view. So straighten out these principles in your life, try to adopt a right model. You think, you decide. I'm not telling you what to do. Again, I'm trying to show you how to think, present options. And now you ask yourself, are you being the best parent that you can be? If not, you have the capacity to change, become better. Tie back all that. Shri Ram, King Dashrath, the wives, the mothers, they insisted that, they provided that environment. The guru as well, right? Not conflicting, one, treatment there. And Shri Ram and his brothers, they learned what they had to learn in that gardening sort of environment. They grew up and thrived, and they went on to, live their lives based on the principles that they were given when they were in that sort of gardening environment. Okay? So at this point, devotees, for today, I'll conclude here. Bole Sri Raja Ramachandra ki Jai.